Welcome to Sleepless Lantern, where stories from the past are told in a quiet voice, made for gentle nights and slower hours. Tonight, we step inside a medieval kitchen. Around the year 1350, in a small English village, the walls are built of wattle and daub, patched with drying herbs. There is no chimney, only a smoke hole near the thatched roof. The hearth is the heart of the home. A sunken fire pit ringed with stones, always smoldering, never fully cold. If you find peace in these soft histories, you're always welcome to subscribe. So the lantern light finds you again next time. In this story, there are no wars, no kings, no great turning points. Just quiet sounds, the scrape of a spoon in a pot, the rustle of rushes underfoot, a woman's hands kneading dough while her child feeds kindling to the fire. There is something comforting in how people once made food with patience. A slow, smoky rhythm that marked the day. Cooking was not just a task, but a ritual of survival, family, and love. And so, if your eyes are heavy, or your thoughts too quick, come close to the hearth. Sit by the low bench, where dried onions hang overhead and warmth gathers in the stones. Let's wander through the slow, fragrant world of a 14th century kitchen and see what comfort we find there. Chapter 1. The hearth that never dies. The morning light doesn't pour through the cottage window. It seeps, pale and filtered through linen curtains streaked with soot. There's no sudden brightness, only the slow easing of the dark. Outside, the fog clings to the fields like a sleeping blanket, and inside, the only thing fully awake is the fire, or rather the embers. In this home, like many others across the English countryside, the hearth never truly goes out. Before sleep, someone, usually the eldest woman, banked the fire. She pushed the red coals together, covered them with ash and a half log of oak, and whispered a quiet prayer. A living kitchen needs living flame. Now at dawn she rises. Her name is Maud. Her knees ache as they always do, and her fingers are thick from years of dough, cold and use. But she knows her fire. She pokes gently through the ashes and finds the red glow hiding beneath, like a sleeping fox in snow. She feeds it kindling, split twigs, bark curls, a twist of dried straw. Then she places a little breath into the base of the flame. Slow and patient, the coals flicker. A curl of smoke rises, and soon, the first real flame of the day crackles, quiet and determined. The hearth sits low in the center of the home, just a shallow basin of earth ringed with stones, blackened with long memory. It does not look like much, but in a world without ovens or knobs or fire starters, it is everything. From the beams overhead hang dried sprigs of sage and thyme. Their scent sharpens as the fire warms the air. A pot of water, fetched from the stream and left overnight to settle, is ladled into a thick iron kettle and hung from a swiveling hook over the fire. The kettle was handed down from Maud's mother, and likely her mother's mother. It weighs as much as a sack of wheat, but its bottom has never cracked. Outside, a rooster tries to crow. It sounds more like a complaint than a declaration. The wind pushes smoke back into the room for a moment, and Maud opens the side shutter a hand's width to let it escape. The walls, coated in whitewash years ago, are now gray with soot. But the hearth needs no chimney. Just air, patience, and care. Her daughter, Alice, wakes next. She's still a girl in many ways, though old enough now to tend the fire when Maud is out gathering. She carries a basket of chopped leeks and greens from yesterday's garden visit. They'll be stewed in the water with barley and salt. If they're lucky, maybe a rind of salted pork, trimmed from last winter's hanging meat. Alice stirs the pot with a carved wooden spoon. Dark with age, the bowl of it smoothed to velvet by thousands of turns. The handle bears the scratch of her uncle's name, though he died before she was born. It's a kitchen full of ghosts, but none that haunt. The rushes on the floor rustle as someone walks in. Maud's husband, back from the small yard with the morning eggs. He's quiet, not from lack of words, but out of reverence for the slow rhythm of the room. The kitchen is waking, but gently. Even the chickens outside seem to know not to be loud. In time, the pot will bubble. The spoon will turn again. More water will be fetched. A flat round of oat bread will be toasted on a stone by the fire's edge. Butter, yellow and stiff from the larder, will soften by the hearth. But for now, there is only warmth and steam and silence. The fire is alive again. The kitchen breathes. Chapter 2. Bread by hand and stone. The stew simmers slowly now, its thin broth gathering the green of leeks and the softness of barley. But no meal feels whole without bread. Not in this home, nor in any like it. Bread is the thread that ties the hours together. And in Maud's kitchen, it begins long before the fire is lit. The flour was ground yesterday, a coarse blend milled between two stones. The lower one wide and still, the upper one turned by hand. It's not white or fine like a noble's flour. No, this flour holds fragments of husk, flecks of the earth it grew from, and the scent of summer field. A poor household might mix it with rye or barley, whatever they could find. Wheat was precious, saved for feast days or barter. The small hand mill sits on a low stool by the wall, its edges dusted with powder. Alice used it just before dusk, sitting cross-legged, turning the upper stone round and round until her arms ached. A slow rhythm. Not loud, just steady. Like the hush of a distant wheel. Now in the gray light of morning, Maud opens the wooden flour box. She runs her hand through the meal, feeling for stones. A pebble could crack a tooth. There's always at least one. She picks it out, then pinches a bit of flour to test its softness. It's good enough. There is no measuring, only memory. A handful of flour for each person. A pinch of salt. A dipper of warm water from the pot over the fire. Sometimes a spoon of ale, or a splash of leftover whey from cheese-making. Whatever brings the dough together. Maud begins to knead. Her fingers press into the lump, fold it, press again. It's not sticky nor smooth. It resists her hands like clay. But she knows the feel of it. When to turn, when to rest it. Kneading is not just work. It is quiet thinking. The dough grows warm beneath her palms. It softens slightly, gives in. Alice joins her, dusting the table with more flour. Her small fingers try to mimic the motions. She folds once, then again. The dough squeaks faintly as it stretches. A soft, living sound. They work in silence for a while, with only the fire crackling beside them and the gentle bubbling of the pot. When the dough is ready, they shape it into rounds. Not loaves, but flat cakes. Bread that cooks quickly, right on the hearthstone or against the inside wall of a clay oven, if they are lucky enough to have one. Their neighbor Joan has a bakehouse. Once a week, the women gather there with heavier doughs, leavened with sour starters or bits of saved yeast. Those are the days of big loaves and ash-smeared faces, laughter and smoke, stories traded like coin. But not today. Today it is hearth bread, simple and warm. Maud clears a space by the edge of the fire where the stone is hottest. She lays one of the rounds gently down, then the next. The dough sizzles faintly as it meets the surface. The heat reaches in, not harsh, not like a stove's dry metal. It cooks with patience. The smell of it rises like memory. Alice leans forward, watching the edges bubble slightly, waiting for the right moment to turn. Maud lets her try. She uses a flat stick, sliding it beneath the bread and flipping it carefully. One edge chars a little too much. But that's how the first one always goes. The second is better. In a few minutes the bread is ready. Browned on both sides, puffed slightly, warm through. Maud presses her fingers to its surface. Soft. She breaks one round open. Steam curls out. She offers Alice a bite, And the girl grins, mouth full, cheeks warm. They will eat it with stew. Or with butter, if there is any. Maybe dipped into honey, if the bees were kind this year. Outside, the morning mist is lifting. A rooster crows again, louder now. Somewhere far down the road, a cart rattles past. But in the kitchen, the world stays slow. The bread is done. The table is set with wooden bowls and pewter spoon. The fire, now fully awake, gives off a golden heat. Maud sits for a moment, hands on her knees, watching her daughter nibble the edges of her work. No oven. No timer. Just hands and stone and warmth. And the bread, coarse, soft, and perfect. Chapter 3. The tools beside the fire. There are no drawers in Maud's kitchen. No cabinets with hinges. What they need is kept in sight, hanging from nails, resting on shelves, tucked between stones near the hearth. The tools of cooking are few, but each one matters. Each has its place. Beside the fire, propped neatly against the wall, rests the long-handled peel, a flat wooden paddle used to lift hot bread from the hearth. The edge is scorched dark from use, but the handle is polished smooth from many hands. It isn't fancy, just a slice of old oak carved years ago by Maud's husband when the oven was new. The blade is slightly uneven, and the head leans left, but it still works, and in this kitchen that's enough. Above the fire, 2 blackened iron pots hang from an iron hook, one round, one taller and narrower. They are moved with a rod called the pot crane, a swiveling arm fixed to the fire beam, made to swing out and in again. Maud learned long ago how to tell the fire's heat by the color of the pot's belly, dull gray when cool, shining black when hot enough to boil. There is also the ladle, long-handled, iron-bowled, with a notch at the lip where it once cracked but didn't break. Maud's mother-in-law repaired it with a bit of wire and faith. It has survived 3 decades, and many stew pots since. The spoons are made of wood, one thick, one thin. The thicker one is for stirring. The thin one is for serving. Both live in a low bowl near the fire pit, along with a drying cloth and a sliver of lye soap, saved for washing when the pot is empty. No one wastes lye soap in this house unless it's needed. It stings the skin, but it cuts through grease. It smells of ash and sharpness. On the back wall, there is a shelf that holds the cutting board, flat, deeply scarred, with a notch in one corner where a small mouse once chewed through the edge. The knife rests there too, wrapped in cloth when not in use. Its blade was sharpened last week against the whetstone, and it can split an onion with no effort at all. It used to be longer, but time and sharpening have worn it down. Now it is short and sure, like Maud herself. Near the door, hanging from a loop of twine, is the herb knife, smaller with a curved blade for chopping green. It's kept near the drying rack, a rough-lashed frame where bunches of thyme, rosemary, lavender, and wild mint hang by their stems. When Alice was younger, she thought of them as sleeping upside down. Even now, she sometimes gives them names. There's Agnes, the shy lavender bundle, old Robert, the stubborn thyme, and then there is the pestle and mortar, hewn from stone, heavy and cool to the touch. It lives beside the wall, where the light falls soft in the afternoon. Garlic goes into it. Salt. Bits of mustard seed. Sometimes dried nettle. Sometimes elder bark. Sometimes even medicine, when someone's chest tightens with cough. It has ground more than just food. It has ground worry and hope. On the floor near the hearth is the ash rake, a long iron hook for shifting coals, with a looped handle to hang when it's not in use. Every evening, it draws a bed of ash over the embers to keep them warm overnight. Every morning, it clears the ashes aside to make way for flame again. These are the tools of the kitchen. Not bright or many, but enough. There are no clocks, but each item marks time in its own way. The pot boils slowly. The spoon turns when needed. The bread toasts when the smoke smells sweet. The herbs dry over weeks. The knife dulls over months. The pestle outlives the people who hold it. And the fire, of course, marks everything. Hours, seasons, years. Alice once asked why there weren't more things in their kitchen. Why no shining copper pots like the ones she'd heard about in the steward's manor? Maud had smiled and said, "Because this is a kitchen that knows what it is. A kitchen for feeding, not for show. A kitchen of use, not of want." She hadn't meant to sound proud, but there was pride in it quietly. In the way everything had a place. In the way her hands knew where to reach, even with her eyes shut. Outside, the wind rattles the shutters gently. Inside, the fire hisses. Not loud, not angry, just working. The stew thickens. The bread has been eaten. The bowl of leeks is empty. Alice begins to gather the tools, wiping them down, placing them in their places. The kitchen breathes again, slower now, settled. Each tool rests. The work of the morning is done. Chapter 4. Water, Ash, and Soap. In a kitchen without pipes, water is a task of its own. Before the bread, before the stew, before the fire crackles, someone must carry water. It comes from the stream beyond the hedgerow, where the reeds bend low and frogs vanish with a splash at the first sound of footsteps. The stream runs clear after rain, but in long summer dry spells, it grows slow and shallow, muddied at the edges. Alice carries the first bucket each morning, the smaller one, bound in iron bands. Her arms strain, but she never spills much now. Not like her first tries, when she came home soaped and laughing, and Maud shook her head but smiled just the same. Maud fills the big bucket after, heavier, steadier. It creaks as she swings it home, the weight pressing into her palm, water sloshing in slow waves. Her feet know the path by memory. The worn groove in the dirt, the root that juts out just before the back step. This water will not be wasted. Every drop has a purpose. Some is warmed in the pot for cooking. Some poured over herbs to steep into a drink. Some is kept aside, cool, in a clay jug sealed with a damp cloth to stay fresh. And some, a precious little, is used for washing. Washing, in the 1300s, is not what it will one day become. There are no scented soaps in this kitchen, no shining taps or polished basins. Clean is not about perfume or whiteness. Clean means not sick. Clean means the skin can breathe. Clean means you've scraped away the day's grime. And for that, there is ash. White ash, sifted fine from the fire's remains. Maud collects it in a shallow wooden bowl each morning. She lifts it gently with her hands. It is so light, it floats if disturbed, like winter dust. The ash is mixed with water in a small crock, stirred until it settles into a soft gray lye. Caustic, gut, sharp, dry, strong enough to sting a scrape, but useful. It cuts grease from the pot. It lifts stubborn stains from cloth. And when used with care, it becomes a kind of soap. Alice watches as Maud dips a cloth into the lye mix, wrings it tight, and scrubs the stew pot from the inside out. The iron hisses faintly beneath the dampness, still warm from the fire. With a twist and a scrape, the bowl shines again. Not silver, not smooth, but ready. For their hands and faces, they use something gentler. A sliver of old soap, saved in a dry pouch. It was made last spring with leftover lard, boiled with ash water, and scented with lavender stalks. It's coarse like sand pressed into clay, and it smells faintly of fire and bloom. Maud lets Alice wash with it once a week on washing days. Today is not one of those days, but they rinse their hands anyway, dipping fingers into a basin, and rubbing with mint leaves from the kitchen rack. The leaves crush beneath their touch, releasing a sharp, clean scent. It stays on their fingers as they eat. And then there are the cloths, woven from flax, homespun, and uneven. Some are dyed brown from walnut hulls, others left plain. They hang from a line strung by the hearth, drying one by one after use. No linen is thrown away here. When a cloth grows too thin, it becomes a rag. When a rag frays, it becomes a wick. When even that fails, it is burned, returned to ash. Every part of cleaning has its rhythm. Water in, hands scrub, ash spread, sundries. Evening comes, and always the fire burns down to fuel tomorrow's soap. On colder days, when the chill bites and the air feels heavy, Maud sometimes boils water with thyme and sage, letting the steam fill the kitchen. They lean over the pot, breathing in deeply. It's said to clear the lungs, said to ward off illness, said to chase away miasma, the bad air. They don't understand germs, not yet, but they know the scent of health. Alice asks once, "Why don't we wash like they do at the castle?" Maud dries her hands, then answers quietly, "Because we wash for living, not for looking." In the castles, washing can be ceremony. Rose water in basins, scented towels offered to guests, hands sprinkled before feasts. But here, washing is about work. It's about surviving the mud, the smoke, the soot. It is not about appearing fresh. It is about staying strong. Outside, the stream babbles. Clear again. A sparrow flicks dust over its wings, bathing without water. Even the animals know how to clean in their own ways. And inside, Maud folds the cloths once more, hanging them by the fire. The ash is sifted. The soap is saved. The bucket is emptied, then filled again. In a world without pipes or plumbing, this is how clean begins. Not in perfume, but in patience. Not in sparkle, but in care. Chapter 5. The Scent of the Kitchen. Every kitchen has a scent. Even before the fire is lit or the pot stirred, even before herbs are chopped or bread is broken. The air holds something. A memory of meals past. A whisper of what the walls have seen. In Maud's kitchen, the scent is layered, deep as the wooden beams above. It lives in the rushes scattered across the floor, crushed underfoot and changed with the seasons. In winter she lays pine and rosemary, to sweeten the air and ward off fleas. In spring, she favors sweet flag and mint. Now in early autumn, dried marjoram and sage give the room a faint sharpness. Herbal, warm, and just a little bitter. There's the fire, always the fire, at the center of everything. Even when it burns low, its smoke lingers. Not harsh like chimney soot, but settled, like a blanket that never fully leaves the shoulders. The hearthstones breathe it. The iron pots wear it. Even Maud's hair smells faintly of it, no matter how often she rinses it with vinegar and combs it out in the morning light. The scent of stew builds slowly. First, a raw sharpness, onion, garlic, a hint of turnip. Then warmth, oats swelling, barley softening, meat releasing its fat into the water. Later, a depth, the bottom of the pot darkening, flavors thickening, steam carrying it all into the air like a quiet song. It clings to the rafters and settles on the table. It even reaches outside sometimes, through cracks in the shutters. The neighbors will guess what's cooking, but not all scents come from meal. There are dried apples hanging from a string near the window, their sweetness soft and sour, touched by dust. A crock of curds rests beneath a cloth on the back shelf, sharp with fermentation. Yesterday's beer mash, sour and warm, waits by the doorway, soon to be fed to the pigs. Even the bread leaves its trace. Scorched flour, broken crust, warmth tucked into linen. Maud pays attention to these things, though she's never said so aloud. She knows when something's wrong by scent. When milk's turned too far. When eggs have spoiled. When a pot has been left too long and needs rinsing with herbs before it can be used again. She has no words for most of these smells, but her nose tells her more than her eyes. There are pleasant scents, too. Small and fleeting. The pear from the tree out back, ripening in a bowl. A sprig of lavender tucked into the herb shelf, old but still fragrant when crushed. Even Alice herself, all soap and rushes and sunlight from running outside. Sometimes Alice asks questions as they cook. Today she stirs the pot slowly and asks, "Did people always cook like this?" Maud lifts a lid to check the bread near the fire. "Like this," she repeats. "Not always. But fire's always been the heart." "Before stoves?" Alice asks. Maud chuckles softly. "There were no stoves when I was your age, no chimneys either. Just smoke in the rafters and heat in the walls." She remembers her grandmother's house, darker, lower, with soot-blackened beams. The kitchen smelled more of peat than wood, more of salted meat than herbs. She remembers a fire that never truly died, only slept under ash. That scent, scorched wool, dried leek, and wet earth, comes back in a blink. Alice doesn't know those smells. Her kitchen has its own story now. The scent of the linen cloth Maud lays over the bread basket. The sharp tang of vinegar used to clean the table. The sweetness of mint rubbed between fingers. The iron tang of the knife's blade when it cuts into raw beetroot. The sour of spilled milk that needs to be scrubbed out before it settles. These are the kitchen's words. A language of scent. Even the soap has its own voice. Not the rose petal scent of the manor house, but something simpler. Lye and lavender, earth and effort. In the evening, when the meal is done and the bowls are cleared, Maud often sits with the door ajar and lets the cool air in. The kitchen settles into stillness. The smoke thins, the steam fades, and the remaining scents of the day drift and mingle. There is peace in that. A quiet moment to smell what the day was made of. Not just ingredients, not just chores, but bread, ash, soap, dot, onion, tar, hearth, hands, diet, child, that kind, fire, and beneath it all, something steady. The deep, warm scent of living well with little. Chapter 6. The guests at the table. Evenings are when the kitchen becomes something more than a place for work. The fire is gentler now, no longer boiling or baking, just glowing. A quiet red under the hearthstone. The tools are cleaned, the rushes have been swept, and the pot has been scraped nearly clean. Now comes the moment for sitting, for sharing, for the table. It's not a grand table, rough-hewn, slightly uneven, with a wobble in the left leg that Maud has long since given up trying to fix. She keeps a folded bit of old wool under the short leg to steady it, and that seems good enough. The benches are worn smooth from years of use. They creak when leaned on, groan when someone stands up too fast, but they hold. There are usually 3 at supper: Maud, Alice, and Ewan, Maud's younger brother, who helps tend the fields and lives in the shed behind the goat pens. Sometimes, if a cousin passes through or a neighbor is late on the road, there's a 4th, but mostly it's just them. Tonight, the meal is simple. A stew thick with barley and cabbage. A small heel of bread, sliced carefully so it stretches to all. A bit of hard cheese, brought out from the cold box beneath the floor. Water, cool and clean, served from a jug that sweats slightly in the warmth of the room. They do not say grace with words, not exactly. But Maud always pauses before the first bite. Just a moment. A breath. A glance upward, or maybe inward. Then she nods, and the meal begins. Alice eats quickly at first, then slows, dipping her bread into the stew and watching the fire. Ewan breaks off small bites of cheese, chewing thoughtfully, not saying much unless spoken to. Maud eats last, slower still, taking in the day as she chews. But sometimes, when the food is plain and the work behind them, they begin to talk, not loudly, not with great excitement, but with the warmth of people who know each other deeply. Ewan tells a story about a goose that escaped the neighbor's fence and wandered through the beans. Alice laughs, imagining the muddy feathers. Maud listens with half a smile. remembering the neighbor's temper and the fuss that surely followed. Then Alice asks questions, always curious, always full of wondering. What did they eat in the old days before fire? Did people ever eat flowers? Could you really live on just bread and herbs? Maud answers patiently. Before fire, they ate raw things, roots, berries, meat if they were lucky. But that was long before us. She nods at the dried flowers above the hearth. Some flowers you can eat, but not all. Elderflower, yes. Foxglove, no. One heals, the other takes. And bread and herbs? Alice presses. You can live on less than you think, Maud says quietly, but not forever. It's not just food that fills the table. Sometimes stories come too. Ewan remembers a tale their grandfather told, of the man who followed the scent of soup across 3 counties, only to find it was all in his head. Alice giggles. She knows the story, but likes hearing it again. There's comfort in repetition, like chewing bread crust or watching firelight flicker. The kitchen becomes softer in the evenings. The edges blur. The warmth of the hearth seems to spread beyond the stones, settling into the benches, into the backs of their hands, into the grain of the table itself. And sometimes Maud sets out one extra plate, not for a person exactly, not someone living. It's an old habit inherited from her mother and hers before that. A gesture, not a superstition. One more plate. A bit of crust. A spoonful of stew. For those who've passed, perhaps. Or for the spirit of the house. Or just because it feels right. Alice used to ask about it, but now she just watches. Sometimes she places a crumb on the plate herself, carefully. A gift. Do you think they eat it? She once asked. Maud had said, maybe not with mouths, but maybe with memory. Tonight, the extra plate holds a bit of cheese, and one last piece of bread. No one touches it, but they all notice it. And when supper is finished, when the bowls are stacked, and the crumbs swept and the benches pushed in, Maud carries the extra plate to the hearth. She leaves it there near the fire, just for a little while longer, just in case. The table is quiet now, but it has been full, not just with food, but with breath, with voices, with presence. And that is its work, too. To hold people, to feed more than body, to welcome guests seen and unseen. Chapter 7. The Cold Morning Wash. Morning comes gently in the countryside, not with alarms or hurried footsteps, but with the slow brightening of sky beyond shuttered windows, the first stirrings of birds in the thatch, the faint whisper of wind against the walls. Inside the kitchen, the hearth is quiet. The fire is nothing more than white ash and half-glowing embers. Cold has settled into the stones, not a biting cold, but a damp one, the kind that sinks into wood, into cloth, into the skin of your fingers before you've even finished your first breath of the day. Alice is always the first to wake, though she doesn't mean to be. Her pallet is closest to the hearth, and the light reaches her face through the cracks in the shutters. She blinks slowly, stretches her arms and pulls the woven blanket up to her chin just for a moment longer. But then comes the chill, the honest kind that tells you to rise and work or lie still and shiver. So she gets up. She pads across the cold stone floor, barefoot, her feet making almost no sound. A line of her breath appears in the air, faint but real. The bucket by the door is full from last night, fetched before sundown when the stream was still awake and the sky still warm. The morning wash is not a luxury. It's not something to be skipped or softened. It is routine. A small, bracing ritual. Alice pours water into a shallow wooden basin and shivers at the sound of it, clear and sharp, like glass being touched. She rolls up her sleeves. No soap this time. Just water and a bit of vinegar if Maud remembers it. The cold stings her fingertips. She dips them first, then her hands, her wrists next. Finally, she splashes her face. Eyes squeezed tight, lips pressed together, gasping softly as the cold clutches her skin. She doesn't cry out. Not anymore. She's used to it now. Maud appears not long after. Quiet and slow, a shawl wrapped tight around her shoulders. Her hair is braided loosely, wisps falling around her face. She nods at Alice, who is already patting her face dry with a bit of clean cloth. Cold? Maud asks, though she already knows. Not too bad, Alice answers, teeth chattering just a little. Maud smiles and dips her own hands into the basin. The water is even colder now. She bears it without complaint, scrubbing behind her ears, along her neck, down to her elbows. Then she wipes dry with the same cloth, wringing it out carefully, and hanging it near the hearth to dry. You want the vinegar? She asks. Alice nods. Maud fetches the small brown bottle from the shelf. They pour just a few drops into the water. The sharp scent fills the air, clean, cutting, almost sweet. Some mornings, they use mint. Other days, thyme. But vinegar is best when there's been rain, when the air feels thick. Ewan joins them last. He never rushes the mornings. He splashes his face in silence, and then pours the rest of the basin out the back door, onto the earth, where it joins the chill of dew on grass. Washing is not only about skin. It's about presence, about wiping the night from your face, about starting new. In a world without clocks, this is how time moves. Cold water, soft towel, breath rising in the morning air. Maud combs Alice's hair as they sit near the hearth. The comb is bone, smooth with age, teeth worn uneven. She works carefully, slowly, drawing it through the strands as Alice hums a small tune under her breath. Tangled ends are softened with oil made from crushed hazelnuts, saved for this purpose. One drop goes a long way. Outside, the sun has not yet crested the hills, but the light is pale and ready. Maud opens the shutters just a crack. Cold air slips in. Along with it comes the smell of damp earth, of wet wood, of sheep far off in the pasture. She leaves the window open just enough to let the night finish leaving. They do not heat the water unless someone is sick. When Alice had the cough last winter, Maud warmed the water in the stew pot, stirred in marjoram and nettle, and let her soak her feet until they turned pink and drowsy. Then she wrapped them in cloths heated by the hearth and hummed to her until she slept. But that's for special days. Most mornings the cold is its own medicine. It wakes the eyes. It firms the fingers. It reminds them that they are alive and strong and able. As the sun breaks over the distant trees, the kitchen begins to shift again. From sleep to work, from quiet to purpose. The fire will be stirred, the pot set, the bread begun. But before all that, the water. Before hands knead dough or stir oats, they must be rinsed. Before knives chop or herbs are hung, the faces must be cleaned. Before anything is made, the body is made ready. This is the rhythm of the cold morning wash. Quiet, simple, bracing, and kind. Not a punishment, not a hardship, but a beginning. Chapter 8. Bread, Trade, and the Market Road. The smell of bread baking is different from other scents in the kitchen. It's slower, deeper, more forgiving. A quiet kind of promise, one that builds, rises, and holds steady. Maud begins the dough not long after the morning wash. The embers have been stirred back to life, and the hearth is glowing again. She sets a small clay bowl near the fire, just close enough for warmth, just far enough from flame. In it is a sponge of yesterday's leavening, saved carefully overnight. Alice watches her knead. She always watches. Maud's hands are firm but calm, pressing, folding, turning. The flour dust floats in the air around them, catching the morning light like fog in a sunbeam. She says little while she works. There's something sacred about dough, something you shouldn't speak too loudly around. The silence helps it rise. Can I try? Alice asks. Maud nods and moves aside. Alice presses her small hands into the dough, mimicking the motion she's seen 100 times. Push with the heel, fold, turn. Her hands are not as strong, but the dough yields just a little, as if recognizing effort. Keep it moving, Maud says softly. Don't tear. Don't rush. Once the dough is shaped and set near the hearth, covered with a cloth, Maud turns her attention to the basket by the door. Market day is tomorrow. Bread is not only for eating, not always. It is currency. It is kindness. It is offering. They trade with it. One large loaf, dark and dense with barley, might bring back a length of waxed thread or a small pouch of dried berries. A finer loaf, made with honey and a pinch of spice, might be given to the priest or a neighbor after childbirth. Maud counts out what they have. 2 round loaves from yesterday, still good. A handful of dried apples, strung on a loop of cord. A small wedge of hard cheese wrapped in linen. 1 pot of goose fat, rendered last week and sealed tight. She wraps everything carefully, tying each bundle with strips of old cloth. The bread goes into a basket, covered with a clean square of homespun. Alice helps, smoothing the cloth edges and checking the knot. When we go to market, Alice says, can we get more salt? Maud nods. If the fishmonger comes. And sweetroot? Alice's eyes are hopeful. We'll see, Maud replies. If the price is fair. Ewan enters, brushing straw from his shoulders. Market tomorrow? He asks, already knowing the answer. Maud gestures to the packed basket. Just enough to carry. He nods. I'll come. Might be a good day for fletching, or trade for tin. The market road isn't far, but it always feels longer on foot. It winds past the stream, around the edge of the barley field, and over a small ridge lined with hawthorn. Tomorrow, they will walk it at dawn, basket in hand, sun low and soft behind them. But even today, in preparation, the kitchen takes on a different rhythm. Bread for others must be baked just right. Not too dark, not too soft. The crust must crack slightly when tapped. The smell must be enough to tempt, but not so strong as to suggest indulgence. Maud shapes each loaf with quiet care. She presses a thumb into the center of one, marks it with a cross on top, and sets it beside the hearth to rise. Alice prepares the herb bundles, simple little knots of thyme, marjoram, and mint, tied with twine. They're small but useful. People like them for stew or tea. They trade well when fresh. Outside, the clouds begin to gather, the kind that don't bring storm, but suggest a shift. Cooler winds, the scent of wet leaves. Market weather, busy, muddy, alive. By midday, the bread is ready for the bake. Maud rakes coals to the side and places the loaves in the small clay oven built against the hearth wall. The door is sealed with a stone and packed with wet straw. Not perfect, but it holds heat well enough. Alice listens for the sounds, the slight hiss of steam, the crackle of crust forming. Will it be ready in time? She asks. Maud smiles gently. Always is. The smell fills the house. Warm, grainy, with a hint of smoke. Different from stew, different from porridge. This is a smell that speaks of trade, of travel, of hands, exchanging goods with nods instead of words. By evening the bread is cooled and packed. The house is swept. The hearth is banked. And the market road waits. Not yet walked, but already part of the air. Alice can't sleep easily the night before market. Her eyes stay open long after the shutters are closed. She listens to the wind outside, thinks of voices she hasn't heard yet, of new things she might see. But in the kitchen, Maud sleeps soundly. The bread is baked. The baskets are ready. The road will rise to meet them. Chapter 9. At the market cross. The market road curves like a ribbon of earth through the morning mist. It's early. So early that the birds have not yet begun their full chorus. Just a few tentative chirps high in the hedgerow, and the hush of damp grass beneath feet. Maud walks with steady pace, the basket balanced on one hip. Ewan carries the bundle of herbs. Alice trots behind them. Wrapped in a shawl, her eyes wide, her nose red from the cold, the world smells of damp bark and crushed clover. Each step presses dew into their soul. The market cross stands in the heart of the village, not a grand town but a gathering of souls. Thatched roofs nestled between old stone lanes, with one open square where everyone meets. A stone pillar rises in its center, weathered and worn, carved long ago with curling vines and unreadable letters. They call it the cross not because of any arms, but because it marks the crossing of trade. By the time they arrive, others are already setting up. The tanner has his stall open, a canvas sheet slung low over oiled hide. A girl from the mill pours grain into cloth sacks, while her brother counts handfuls of dried peas into bowls. An old shepherd, whose back is bent like a hook, leads 2 lambs with twine around their necks, and settles into the sunniest corner. Maud lays down a piece of linen on the ground, weighed at each corner with flat stone. Upon it, she arranges the loaves first, dark and round, their crusts dusted with flour and marked with her thumbprint. Next come the bundles of herbs tied with thread. Then the cheese, carefully unwrapped just enough to show the firm golden edge. Finally, the pot of goose fat, its lid sealed with wax, gleaming faintly in the light. Alice crouches beside it all, keeping a watchful eye. She loves to see people glance at the bread, slow their walk, lean in to sniff, or ask how long it's been baked. Ewan doesn't stay long. He slips away to find the smithy's son, hoping to trade for a bit of tin or a new shaft for arrows. He likes the market, but not its noise. The sun creeps higher. The square fills. Boots thump across stones. Women call out prices. A piglet squeals. A handful of doves flap from a rooftop, circle twice, then vanish into the pale sky. Maud doesn't call out. She never has. She waits. And one by one, they come. A weaver offers a bundle of dyed thread in exchange for 2 loaves. The dye's uneven, but strong. Maud inspects the knots, tests the tension, and nods. A beekeeper's daughter, hair sticky with honey, trades a lump of wax for herbs. She clutches the thyme like treasure, presses it to her nose, smiles without a word. An old man, toothless and slow, barters a handful of carved buttons for the smallest loaf. They're made of bone, polished smooth, drilled clean. Maud weighs them in her hand, then passes him the bread. He walks away nibbling the crust, humming to himself. Alice watches it all, her chin on her knees. A woman approaches, finely dressed by village standards. Linen that's not patched, a ribbon in her braid, soft gloves. She lifts the wax-sealed jar and turns it in her fingers. "Goose fat?" she asks. Maud nods. From last week's rendering, clean, no smoke, good for sore hand. The woman sniffs, smiles, and reaches into her satchel. She pulls out a folded cloth. Inside, 2 small bundles of dried lavender, tied with blue thread. The scent drifts up like a memory of summer. Maud nods, and the trade is made. Around them, voices rise and fall like wind in a thatch. News is passed as freely as goods. Whose child is ill, which fields are failing when the next storm might come. Alice hears a boy her age boasting about catching a fish as long as his arm. Another girl offers to swap a painted pebble for a turn with someone's spinning top. There's a kind of magic in it, small and unspoken, but real. By noon their basket is nearly empty. What's left is wrapped again with care. 1 loaf, saved for supper. 1 twist of herbs, a few buttons tucked into Maud's apron. They sit on the low stone wall by the cross and eat oatcakes from home. Ewan returns with a new tin cup, proud but quiet. Alice leans against Maud's arm and watches the crowd. The market isn't loud, not exactly, but it hums. With life, with trade. with stories in the shape of goods passed from hand to hand, and though they've brought little, they've returned with enough. Thread, wax dot, lavender, buttons, news, and a walk back home in the late day sun. The path golden and long, the basket lighter, and the day full. Chapter 10. Winding down by candlelight. The walk home from the market is quieter. There's a tiredness to it, but it's not unpleasant. It's the kind of weariness that follows a day well spent, where the feet ache gently and the mind is full. The sun, lower now, slants across the path in long amber strips, catching on the barley tips and glinting off puddles left from last week's rain. Maud's basket, nearly empty, swings light at her side. The lavender bundles inside rustle against the folded thread. Ewan walks ahead, humming softly, the new tin cup swinging from his belt. Alice trails beside Maud, dragging her shawl just enough to sweep the grass. When they reach the edge of the yard, the sun is kissing the tops of the trees. The hens cluck quietly in their pen, and a soft breeze carries the scent of straw and peat. Inside, the hearth is cool. Maud doesn't build a new fire, just enough heat to warm the pot of soup left from yesterday. A few curls of smoke, a glow of embers, and the house begins to shift from the business of the day to the gentleness of evening. The shutters are pulled closed with a creak. The candle is lit, not a fresh one, but the same stub they've used all week, melted slightly at the sides, set in a clay dish. Its flame dances but holds. Ewan scrubs the mud from his boots by the door. Alice removes her shawl and folds it neatly. Maud unwraps the market gains one by one and lays them on the table. The bundle of thread, indigo dyed, strong enough to mend both socks and sleeves. The lump of beeswax, sweet and golden, already soft at the edges from the warmth of the walk. The carved bone buttons, tiny circles of patience, with holes so clean they look made by machine, though they are not. And finally, the lavender. The scent of it unfurls slowly. It's not sharp like rosemary, or earthy like thyme. It's something else. Something softer, like dry sunlight and clean linen, like the end of summer just before the chill returns. Alice buries her nose in the bundle and sighs. "Can I keep one near my bed?" she asks. Maud nods. "It keeps the moths away. Dinner is simple. Bread and broth. A little cheese. The goose fat saved for tomorrow." Ewan tells of a man he met who claims he saw a badger walk across the blacksmith's roof. Alice laughs and doesn't believe it, though she wants to. Maud just smiles and says nothing. After the meal, they sit quietly, not because there's nothing to say, but because the candlelight asks for stillness. Maud threads her needle and begins to mend a tear in her sleeve. The cloth is rough but strong. The new thread glides easily, and she works with slow, small stitches. Alice lays on her mat by the hearth, watching the shadow of the candle flicker on the beams above. She counts the flickers like stars. Ewan polishes the tin cup with a bit of cloth and hums something that might be a tune, or might just be his thoughts turned into sound. Outside, an owl calls once from the trees. Far off, a dog barks. Then, silence. The fire is let to fade. The candle burns lower. The house is wrapped in a hush that is neither cold nor dark, but gentle and full. Maud sets down her sewing and stands. She places one bundle of lavender beneath Alice's head, tucking it gently into the edge of the blanket. The child sighs again, already halfway to sleep. Ewan stretches and places the tin cup near his bedroll, then lies down without a word. Maud snuffs the candle. In the dark, the scent of lavender seems stronger. It lingers in the air like memory. No one speaks. They do not need to. The day has been full. The road walked. The bread shared. And the candle has burned just enough to mark the passage from waking to rest. Chapter 11. Seasons change, but the kitchen stays. The first wind of autumn comes not with thunder or rain, but with a quiet shift in light. It filters through the shutters differently, angled in amber, like honey warming in a jar. Outside, the leaves have not yet turned, but their edges whisper of change. The garden still grows, but slower. The hens lay fewer eggs. The days end sooner. Inside the kitchen, Maud feels the change before she sees it. It's in the bread, which takes longer to rise. It's in the way the hearth burns, not for cooking alone now, but for comfort. She stirs the stew, slower these days, and lingers longer by the fire. Alice notices it too. "Will the snow come soon?" she asks one evening, wrapping a worn wool blanket around her shoulders. "Not yet," Maud replies, "but soon enough. Autumn is a season of quiet preparations. The harvest is nearly done. The beans are strung to dry by the hearth. The onions hang in neat braids near the door. Apples, speckled red and gold, rest in baskets under the table, waiting to be sliced and dried or stewed with cinnamon and clove. Ewan helps cut wood. His arms ache by sunset, but he never complains. Each log stacked means one more warm night ahead. Sometimes he carves figures from the bark scraps, small animals, or faces with lopsided grins. He gives them to Alice, who lines them up on the windowsill, like sentries watching the yard. The kitchen grows dim earlier each day. The candle is lit before supper now, and with it, a rhythm returns. A gentle slowness. Season invites it. Maud mends more often. Not just sleeves and hems, but mittens and cloaks, linings and blanket. The thread from market serves well. It's strong and holds a knot. She works in silence, her fingers steady, the needle glinting softly in the firelight. Alice helps in small ways. She gathers twigs for kindling and keeps watch over the drying apples to make sure the mice don't sneak in. She counts the jars of jam on the shelf. 9 of blackberry, 3 of gooseberry, 1 of plum, saved for midwinter. Evenings stretch longer now, not in sunlight but in stillness. The family sits close to the hearth. Sometimes Maud tells stories, not fanciful ones, but small memories, of her own mother's bread, of winters with deeper snow than Alice has seen, of the time the stream froze and they had to carry water from the well in buckets too heavy to lift. Alice listens, curled against Maud's side, her eyes slowly closing. Ewan sharpens a blade, or fletches an arrow in the corner. The sound of the knife against the whetstone is rhythmic, like a lullaby without a tune. Outside, the wind moves through the trees in long sighs. It rattles the shutters just once, then settles. Sometimes, Maud steps out briefly after supper, shawl wrapped tight, to feel the air. The sky is darker than she remembers, the stars clearer. Milk rises from neighboring hearths, thin and sweet. She returns inside with a flush in her cheeks and cold on her fingertips. As the fire settles, the house takes on a scent that is more than wood smoke. It is a smell of wool and flour, of apples and drying herbs, of warmth saved and shared. It is the smell of time, of seasons, circling back. There is comfort in knowing the kitchen remains while the world turns. The door still creaks. The spoon still fits the old pot. The hearth still glows, and the bread still rises, even as frost whispers at the edges of the world. Chapter 12. A house of smoke and bread. The house rests like a held breath. The season has turned now, fully. The mornings arrive cloaked in mist, with frost laced on the window's edge like spun sugar. Smoke curls from the chimney before dawn, a silent sign that warmth is being made, meal by meal, moment by moment. Maud rises first, as always. Her footsteps are light. The floorboards greet her with their familiar creaks, the rhythm of years worn into wood. The hearth is cold but ready. She stacks kindling, then thicker logs, blowing gently as the first flame catches. The fire crackles low, not hurried. It has all the time it needs. Alice sleeps still, her face turned toward the window, lavender tucked near her pillow. Ewan stirs but doesn't rise. Outside, the world is hushed. Even the birds wait longer to sing now. The kitchen holds its warmth like a secret. Today there will be bread again. The dough is already rising in its bowl, covered with a linen cloth. Maud had prepared it the night before, mixing flour and water with a bit of saved yeast, coaxing it gently. She lifts the cloth now and smiles. The dough has risen slowly, evenly, proof of patience and a warm corner near the coals. She turns it onto the floured board, her hands knowing the steps without thought. Fold, press, turn. The rhythm soothes her. The soft slap of dough against the wood is the morning's only music. Outside, a wind rises, stirring the last leaves from the trees. The trees, bare now, stand like quiet sentinels. Alice wakes to the scent, not sharp or strong, just enough to pull her from dreams. She rises without a word, wraps her shawl, and pads into the kitchen. Her eyes are still soft with sleep. Maud hands her a warm mug, just water steeped with mint and dried apple peel, sweet enough to welcome the day. They sit in the calm. Ewan joins soon after. He adds another log to the fire. Its heat settles deeper now, the kind that seeps into bones and lingers. Maud moves the shaped dough into the pan and slides it into the hearth oven. The lid clinks shut. Now they wait. Waiting is its own kind of work. In these quiet minutes, the house gathers itself. The candle is trimmed, the floor swept, a bit of thread is spun, a chair is mended, and all the while the scent builds. It comes slowly, curling like a whisper from the oven's mouth. Not just the smell of flour and fire, but something older. The of safety, of survival, of hands that have fed, warmed, worked. A scent that lives in the walls and wakes in the coals. When the bread is ready, Maud lifts the lid. Steam rises first, ghost-like and warm. Then the golden crust appears, rounded and proud. She lifts the loaf carefully, taps the bottom, hollow and perfect. Alice claps softly. Ewan cuts kindling into smaller pieces, just for the rhythm of it. He doesn't look up, but Maud sees the corner of his mouth lift. They wait just a little longer, until the loaf is cool enough to slice. Then Maud takes the knife and carves 3 thick pieces. They eat slowly, savoring the warmth, the crisp crust, the soft center. No butter, no honey today, just bread. And still, it feels like a feast. Outside, snow begins to fall. Not fast, just a few flakes drifting down like feathers. Alice presses her nose to the glass. The world beyond is turning white, quiet, small. Inside, the kitchen glows. The house, built from stone and time, holds them gently. Maud looks around, at the basket of dried apples, the shelf of jam, the folded shawls near the door. At Ewan, now humming again as he sharpens a tool. At Alice, still watching the window, a crumb at the corner of her lip. This house has no fine walls, no painted floors, no windows of glass too thick to see through. But it has bread, and warmth, and quiet work. It has smoke that rises every morning, and a fire that waits to be kindled again. It is enough. The end. Thank you for spending this quiet journey with the Sleepless Lantern. Sleep well. Dream of coals and kitchens, of candles and crumbs. Good night.